Well, to accomplish any good thing in life, we are all going to need self-discipline. And why is that? Well, there's something in us that's called our flesh that desires what's contrary to what's right and doing God's will and obeying God. And so we've got to fight this every day. We've got to learn to subdue it, or it will rule over us. And that's why sometimes discipline is called self-control. And so how is it that we get more self-control so that we can do what's right and fulfill God's purpose and plan on earth? Well, it is, first of all, it's the fruit of the Holy Spirit. It doesn't come from ourself, our flesh. And so in Galatians 5, it says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. Then Paul writes to Timothy. He says, for God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but one of power, love, and self-discipline. And so how do we acquire self-discipline so that our life won't be ruled by the selfish desires that wage war in our bodies? And first thing we need to remember how to do that is to practice. Practice what, Pastor? Practice self-discipline. Paul uses an analogy in 1 Corinthians 9 of a runner or a boxer, an illustration. It says they box or they run to win the prize. And so they don't beat the air aimlessly or run aimlessly. They do it with a purpose, and that is to win. And so for somebody who desires to do God's will, bear fruit for Him, be faithful to Him, obedient to Him, we know this. We have got to subdue that flesh. So it takes practice, and practice spiritual practices. Why? Because when we practice things regularly, like prayer, studying the Word, worshiping, listening to sermons, singing music, so forth throughout your day, then we are tapping in to much greater desires, deeper desires than the flesh. And that is spiritual desires. Desires to do His will, to love God and our neighbor, even our enemy. These desires are spiritual, that God has put in the heart of every born again believer. And so then we live from these greater desires to do His will and to serve others and to bear this fruit. It's going to be an outworking of the Holy Spirit empowering us to be like Him. And so this doesn't come from ourselves. It comes from the Lord. So a couple of things that will help us there. We can't do this out of emotion. It's got to be settled inside you. This belief about this is what I want. It is the right thing to do. And when that comes into our heart, into our belief system, then we will practice those disciplines. We will do what it takes because we've already decided this is what I want. This is what it takes to do it. And this is just what I'm going to do. It's settled. Just like an athlete who wants to win the prize, like Paul said, you got to settle it. It's going to take self-discipline, practice, repeating things, same things, drills every day, but always keeping the goal in mind. But for us, what these drills do, what these practices do, is get us in touch and in harmony with God. And it's just like a snowball coming down the mountain. You just desire more. And you don't want to miss your quiet time. Why? Because these wants and desires that you live out of, are so much greater than any fleshly thing. And that then becomes a lifestyle and gets stronger year by year. I know many of you have experienced that. And let this be just an encouragement to us all to keep practicing.